finally had a breakthrough with some ideas that I have been sitting with for a year, and I'm really excited to get going on that. And then tonight, one of our oldest friends in the city, he has played drums with Mario for the last decade. He's just like a tried and true dear one. He's spinning at a bar in Greenpoint, so this afternoon-ish evening, I'm gonna pop up there and go see him, so I'll bring you along. If you're new here, welcome. I am Alexis. I'm a full-time artist here in Brooklyn, New York. I have a home studio, and on this channel I share art and inspiration and life of a full-time artist. If that sounds like something that you're into, I invite you to stick around. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull out everything that I need, get you set up, and we're gonna see what we can get done before we have to head out the door. But I'm just really excited to have the time to make some progress on this, because I think that there is a really deep satisfaction when you take something out of the ideation phase and you are able to actually bring it forth. And that is where we are. So let's get going and see what we can do, and then we'll head to Greenpoint a little bit later. So I had this idea for this collection for quite some time, but I didn't quite know what I wanted to do to get started on it. And I have been working through The Artist's Way, and in one of the recent weeks, Julia talks about just how important it is to play as a creative and to really just give yourself space to experiment and have fun. She actually says that it's enthusiasm and not discipline that leads to a sustainable creative life. And so I have really been practicing bringing in some more of that enthusiasm. I have definitely been focusing on discipline. And so a few days ago, I did my very first Instagram Live, and that was the first step in this whole process. I had been wanting to show up on Instagram Live for quite some time, but with the fear of being perceived, I just avoided it, even though it was something that I wanted to do. And on this day, I just gave myself permission to show up in my fullness of self and to see where it took me. And in my initial panic, because I am socially anxious, that's cool, I pulled out everything. I pulled out gouache and paper, and all of my art supplies somehow ended up on my desk. Because I went into it without any sort of a plan, because I've been really wanting to embrace more spontaneity and just the ability to get started without fully knowing where it's going to take you. And I think that that's absolutely part of this unwiring or this rewiring from capitalism, right? There doesn't always have to be a complete finished product. And so I had just given myself permission on this day to just show up and to see where the day took me. And I'm really glad that I did. I feel like maybe I should have done my first live when I had a very clear plan of action. I don't today. I'm just kind of playing. I feel like I've been really structured with how everything has been happening, like commissions and things that need to get done. And so today is just kind of experimenting to see what works. So I can't promise anything's gonna be a masterpiece by the time of this, but you should share it with the masses. Here's the thing. I think the thing is, for me, it was a fear of being perceived and seen, and my work being good enough, and if you can get past that, and the really cool thing about just putting it out there is that it will probably resonate with more people than you might potentially imagine. I would love to see your cards. I think that the really good things happen when you give yourself permission to step outside of that comfort zone, And I have to remind myself of this all of the time. For the longest time, I had convinced myself that I needed to create this collection with a background of flowers. People love flowers. Flowers are nice. However, here's the thing. I myself don't really do flowers. I have in the past, and I just, within the last year or two, had a couple of things with some daisies, because your girl likes some daisies or those chamomile flowers. But for real, I don't do a lot with flowers. And so I felt like I was trying to force something that was not intuitive to who I was and my creative process. And once I gave myself permission to abandon this idea, that's when like the real solution came. Because here's the thing, in my illustration, one of my most favorite things to include in the backgrounds are these funky plaids, interesting color combinations that add a little, pizzazz to the whole scene. And it's been a minute, if I'm being quite honest, since I have given myself the space to work on another illustration, which means that I need to in the coming weeks. But what I am really grateful for is giving myself the permission to go back to that, right? So something else that Julia Cameron has said is that you should create what is true to you and not what others expect or what you perceive others will like. And so for me, what I really enjoy doing are these plaids. So I gave myself permission to just experiment with that this week. And honestly, I have no idea how it's going to be received, but I had a lot of fun creating them. And if you are a creative, I don't know if you also fall into this trap of like what you think you should be creating versus what you actually want to be creating, and also giving yourself the permission to like create without an end goal in mind. When I started that live and that entire day, I really just released the need for product, right? So I embraced the process, eliminated the need for a finished thing. And in that play, which is something that has been coming up a lot in my morning pages, I had a breakthrough and I was like, yo, this is what I want to be doing and this is the direction that I want to go in. And there's so much satisfaction in giving yourself permission to do what it is that you want to do. And so if it has been a minute since you have been that voice for yourself, I want to encourage you to give yourself the permission to just have some fun. this week I met up with my friend Boo, and I know that I mentioned her in my last video. She's my Art Deco speakeasy loving friend. We decided to meet up to go to the James Baldwin exhibit at the Schomburg. And if you're unfamiliar, the Schomburg is one of my favorite places in the city. It's part of the New York Public Library system at 135th in Harlem, and it's named after Arturo Schomburg. And he was a historian and a writer, and he, through, I believe, the Harlem Renaissance, collected the largest collection of writings and artworks by Black artists and creatives. And so they now house all of his collection and then some at the Schomburg. And it's, I think, typically a research library, but they do these exhibits which are just truly, truly wonderful. It's where I first saw a statue by Augusta Savage that was on display at the Met when I went to their Harlem Renaissance exhibit. And Langston Hughes, my favorite poet, was laid to rest underneath this tile work. And I'm just so grateful to live in a city where you have access to all of this history and all of this incredible creation. All right, I think that is going to be about all that I can get done today. Honestly, got a lot done. The 3 that are finalized, I might redo the green one just because I'm liking the smaller brushes. But when I tell you, sometimes you gotta make a bunch of stuff to find what works. These are all of the ones. Okay, so this is what started it. This is where I was like, I gotta do the plaids. It's a little washed out, but, and then these just didn't work. We'll get there. Tomorrow, this will all be finalized, and then I can get this collection out. They are what I am calling my sentimental collection because I'm a sentimental Cancer, and, you know, I like to tell people how I feel about them. And that's something that I actually think is really important to do. And these are just phrases that I say to people in my life, and maybe I can encourage others to also say what they mean and feel to others as well. So anyways, I'm not gonna get too sappy here, but I need to get ready, maybe eat a quick bite, and then I need to get over to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, for Steven's record spin. And then tomorrow, hopefully I'll be able to get these done and do some test prints. I'll keep you posted on all of that. But yeah, let's get what I need to get done so I can get out to that record spin and maybe have a glass of wine after a day of all of the gouache. But you know, also, gouache is not a medium that I use all of that often. In a previous video, or I have a picture of my sketchbook on the thumbnail. I think it's something like breaking through creative block. That's what it was. I talk about how I took a class with Jill Kittock. She's a phenomenal gouache artist on Instagram, and I took a class with her maybe earlier this year, and she just kind of gave me some tips, gave us in the class tips on how she uses gouache. And I'll be honest, in the class, I didn't fully understand what she meant because I'd never really worked with the medium before. And there's another artist who I greatly admire and respect. She was a part of my artist cohort. Her name is Lainey, Helena Wurtzel. I'll put her Instagram handle here. She uses gouache, but when Lainey uses gouache, she uses it very opaquely. So it's like almost like an acrylic, and her work is just phenomenal. And Jill uses her gouache as almost like a watercolor. And so working with these plaids, I gave myself permission to just add a ton of water to it. And I liked it. I like both uses of it, but there's something about being able to kind of see the layers of the color when you add more water to this medium that I just find really interesting. And that's something that I really, really love about Jill's work. But yeah, it was really fun to get my hands into a medium that is not my medium of choice, nor one that I am well versed in, but I don't know, just play with it and to get more comfortable with it. And I think that's the whole point, right? Like the more you give yourself permission to kind of fuck it up, the more you grow in your comfort of using something, so you're less likely to fuck it up. But I did use paper letters. So even though, I keep looking, they're over there, even though the backgrounds are gouache, you know, on paper for the people, it's on paper, but the lettering that I have they're just letters that I've drawn. So I have like an alphabet or a font, if you will, that I've created for my word pieces and what have you. And so I've cut out the letters in paper, and so that it will create a little bit of a dimension even when it's printed on a print. And I'm really excited to see how that turns out. And I know it's just going to take a little bit of trial and error, but it has felt really phenomenal to just give myself the permission to play. And I know in my last Artist Way vlog, I was talking about how that's something that has just consistently come up in my morning pages, about how I just want to kind of release the pressure of growing a business and have fun. And I think that when you give yourself that space to have more fun, more inspiration comes, and I think that's where the breakthroughs come, and I think that's where the real growth is possible. And yeah, I am definitely going a little cross-eyed from all of the plaids today. But I really, really loved creating them. So I really do have to get out of here in about 10 minutes, which I didn't realize it was actually that late. But let's get up to Greenpoint and listen to some records. Then tomorrow, let's get this collection done and we'll go from there. But thanks for spending today with me. Let's go listen to some rock and roll. You know, when I was younger, people used to often tease me about how sensitive I was, and it came to be like a point of shame for myself. I felt really embarrassed that I cared so much, or that I liked to tell people how much I cared about them. However, I have since come to realize that it is what makes me me, and it allows me to connect with people and to love on people and to support people in a way that is specific to who I am. And so I no longer find it as a point of shame and embarrassment, but I really do see it as one of my strengths. And so this collection really does mean a lot to me, in that in some small way I get to share these words of affirmation and kindness with others in hopes that it might speak a little bit of power and encouragement to whoever receives them. And if you, like me, find yourself on the receiving end of criticism because you care too much, well, I would argue to say that there really is no such thing. All right, so we have the 4 drafts completed, and now my task is to photograph and Photoshop so that when I print them, the colors really pop. I spent a ton of time yesterday attempting this process, and it just did not quite work. And you know what, sometimes that's just the name of the game. And so I think I have a better plan of action moving forward. And I just want to say thank you for spending your time with me and for being here as I rebuild after the most tremendous case of burnout, as I build a life of a full-time artist here in New York City. If you found enjoyment or value here, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. That helps YouTube know to share it with others who might also find enjoyment here. And if you would like to follow along, typically on this channel I share art inspiration and life here in the city, so really a little bit of everything. I really try to include some art and some New York City in some capacity in all videos, so if that's your jam, I invite you to subscribe and to join our very small but growing community here. I am just truly honored that you all choose to spend your time with me and to join me on this journey, so thank you. With all of that being said, I want to say, whatever time of day you watched this, I hope it has been a kind one. Until next time.